Hello, everyone, and welcome to Augmented Engineering in Action, the series where companies show you how they're really using AI. I'm your host today, Scott Carey from Lead Dev, and I'm joined by Matt and Wojtek Trocky. Matt, how you doing today?
Good, Scott. Yeah, excited for this session today and having a conversation with Wojtek. I'm loving all these like boots on the ground stories. Yeah, let's see what Wojtek has to say.
Yeah,
Well,
so this is session four of this series, and we're really excited about this one with Wojtek from MongoDB. He's been doing some really interesting work in terms of how he evaluates these tools, starts to build their maturity, and then the thing that I'm really excited about is how he's starting to teach them how to do like specific jobs and how to kind of attack different parts of the software development lifecycle. So I'm excited to get into all of that. But before we do, Wojtek, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for asking.
Great. And before we get started into this session, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do at Mongo and the team that you work in there.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon for everyone who's joining. My name is Wojtek. I think this will be the hardest part of our today's session, my transition. So I'm part of the senior software engineering within the MongoDB, working as part of the Atlas API platform team. My team is part of the MongoDB Atlas, which is the basically database product. Atlas is this fully managed MongoDB in a cloud. And my team specifically is this force multiplier for hundreds of engineers we have in Mongo, helping them to write efficient, standardized, and performant APIs. In my team, we focus on having this quality and clear plans and brief technical designs. And I think personally, this is also why we're meeting today. This is our secret sauce for our AI enablement. Because of those plans, we can effectively use AIs for some of the use cases. So today, I'm going to share my team journey towards AI workflows for our first experiments to building our own custom automated agents.
Yeah, nice. And just tell me a little bit about your kind of personal journey with AI and augmented kind of coding. When did this start to pop onto your radar, and when did you start to get really excited about the possibilities?
So my team provides foundation for other engineers to build and scale their APIs. And we continuously scale our own impact because we are a small team and we don't want to sacrifice our culture or quality. And during my day-to-day, I often build validation pipelines for other engineers, helping them to ensure that they're meeting some guidelines. And this is where we see some problems that cannot be automated by the code, like classically we do by just linting. And this is also where we see a lot of AI usage. We can use Argument for those to provide us this base platform to invent and get those productivity wins quite quickly. We're using it to more like expert partner instead of like glorify text generator. So Argument really fits very well to that workflow. So for our session today, what I have planned is to share my journey in how we define our needs for those ID assistants, and eventually that led to selection of Argument for my team, and how we're using it for automation.
Yeah, let's get into that evaluation because I think a lot of people are really curious about how others have kind of gone about this journey. And I think that what I really picked up on there was you've clearly built a kind of demarcation between the kind of autocomplete or the code generation part of this ecosystem, and then what you're starting to see is the agentic capabilities. And it's clearly something that you're really interested in, is that agentic part, and I think you've really built this maturity model. But yeah, I won't jump ahead. Tell us a little bit about how you started to evaluate the various assistants on the market.
Yeah, so in our team, we didn't look to pick just a tool or the most popular tool. My team and several volunteers across engineering formed a working group to run this evaluation using Argument and other tools on example projects. And we were driving this quick wins and use cases, documenting them quite clearly, looking for specific wins aspect we're looking for. And as an engineer, I specifically had some framework that I look for. So is the tool reason accurately a very large code base? And this is where we've seen huge benefit coming from Augment, where it could definitely reason across the large code bases. That indexing and search capability replaced replace everything that you have within IDE. You don't need to look for the classes. You don't need to reason across multiple structures. It can guarantee you'll get the right results in the right time. Another thing I really like and how it, Augment outperformed was this multi-step operations and being able to find the different approaches for the problem. So how agent evaluate and then work through the problem, being able to call multiple commands, building the tools, examples to provide the right reasoning. I needed mostly assistant and not the text generator. So for me, the code generation cases were present, but were mostly to evaluate the cases and build something from scratch quite quickly. And last, but mainly deciding factor, it was how it actually provided this entire platform for various engineers and use cases. Specifically, you have IDE plugins and as well CLI, which is the big factor and the reason why we talking today.
Who was running? Yeah, sorry, Butcher. Who was running that process? Like, did you have a group? Did you have like some kind of grounds up kind of people who were really advocating this stuff, who built this model?
I think it was mostly this AI champion group as part of the initial evaluation, and a really great collaboration with Augment team. It was also helping us with the first lessons learned, helping us to build up the best patterns as well. So it was multi-teams, volunteer group scenario.
You discussed, Wojtek, the need to be able to reason really accurately in large code bases, right? This is point number one here in how you thought about evaluating. I think, when we think about large enterprises and the size of their code base, sometimes this can seem somewhat obvious, but we also know that people think about these code assistants as all about code generation, and so then they think about evaluating more from the mindset of like greenfield projects and 0 to 1. Like, what really centered you around this being point number one as something to think about?
Yeah, specifically after those deep investigations and evaluations, we really settle with this quality and being able to be assistants and workflow manager. And I seen huge performance boost, like actual numbers for myself when I was developing and architecting software solutions. Since then, when we selected Augment, myself and other engineers work with plugins and CLI to automate common challenges, and that's what led us to this increased AI maturity journey.
Yeah,
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, walk us through it, because I love this kind of maturity model you've built here.
Oh yeah, this is something that many of you are joining, you may recognize some of the topics, so don't mind me if you have some order differently in your own companies, but we recognize that we need to have some structure in how we adopt the AI. And for my team, that was starting as like, we need to have some prompts and use cases drafted so we know where we at. Basic prompt engineering, everything that you will learn to understand and work with agents, no matter if it's IDE or chat. Then the main part, which is basically establishing the MCPs, those help us to get extra context. You can interact with internal systems, you can bring extra data, and we have the significant wins, basically adding extra data to Augment, being able to interact and work much better. More context you have, the more you can do. And the next one, which is I think I'm most excited about, is guidelines and guardrails. This is where addition of the rules within Augment project. Rules are a way to describe and act within specific guidelines for the agent. Agent can actually manually pick them up. You can select them, or you can have them automatic. And then the real breakthrough on top of this pyramid, it's something I'm going to talk today, which is building this specialized agents. And this is where OG CLI shines through. Um, I started building my own specialized agents for my own work and how I just built performance tests, architecture. And those looking like micro AI personas, but what you're basically doing is just calling CLI with specific prompts, specific actions at certain moments.
Yeah. Um, Wojtek, I know we're going to focus on those last two levels today. I know you're going to show us some of those guidelines and guardrails, and you're going to talk to us about those specialized agents. I've got one more question for you before we do. And also, I want to remind the audience that there is a Q&A function within Zoom. So if you have any questions for Wojtek as he gets through his session here, please do ask, and we'll try and get to some of those towards the end. I guess the question I have before we kind of dive in here was just when you started to work out level 2 here, what context you need to pull in, what MCP connections you need to build. How did you start to figure out like what the most important context was to kind of make this really sing?
Yes, I'm glad you have asked. Yeah, I actually have a slides for it. So this is the screenshot of our guidelines. Without going into details, we're using this always, auto, and manual guidelines engine from Augment, where we can define our core principles of architecture. Those are non-negotiables that are always there, that drive the real impact and help us to basically ensure we are aligned. There's also auto rules and manual. And the manual ones are actually the one that can be used with OGCLI for specific use cases. For example, CI/CD one or API one could be used for validation and reasoning based on the CI/CD issues. And on top of that, we also inject the MCP to OGCLI. So we have a different workflow scripts that call OGCLI with different MCPs as well. Yeah, and then one of the biggest wins we started to see where we started using the MCP server for our CI/CD platform, which we call Evergreen. So this Evergreen MCP server help us to run long-running performance tasks, large logs, evaluations, acceptance tests, something that typically you see run overnight. And as an engineer, when you're working with a change, you can just reach out to that platform, get some reasoning, evaluating the root cause quickly. You coming back in the morning and you have all the results you want. What I also actually feeling very, very successful is how we building the MCP for dynamic guidelines. So this, what you've seen so far was just guidelines you have in the repo as a markdown files. And this is different because this is more like a rack solution. You have a really large set of guidelines. This is what I'm going to show you is basically the website that we have open source, which defines our entire structure and rules, very complex, very large set of rules we decided to publish for API guidelines. So how we want to build API in Mongo, how we want to build API for customers. And when we do that, we also need to validate it. We have some like programmatic validation, but they cover only fraction of those. But because of the dynamic rules, we can efficiently use Augment to perform that validation and reasoning before you even create that PR.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sorry, Matt, I was just going to say that it'd be really interesting to compare the way that you went about this with the first session of this series we did with James from Tilt, because he was, if anyone wants to go back and watch that on our YouTube, he was really focusing on like the rules that they had internally at Tilt and how they started to kind of feed that into Augie and the CLI. So yeah, different approaches, but kind of with that same goal of just building as much context in as possible. Matt, I don't know what you were going to say there.
Yeah, I'd love to stick on this for a second, Wojtek, in terms of how you really think about creating these rules, right? I know that you've authored a lot of these over time, and you're kind of showing me something that pulls me back to an earlier part of my career. I was at Postman for a number of years, and so the API governance and style guide reference that you're showing there is like a significant source of information for how engineers should go and build an API at Mongo. I'm curious, how do you like delineate or differentiate between the sorts of information that should go into these guidelines or rules that maybe some of us are not used to creating yet for these agents, versus when can you just point towards this sort of information that you already have in this like API style guide and governance
Yeah.
portal? Like, do you have any advice on how to think about what should be contained within those rules directly and what can be relied on in terms of your existing sources?
Yes, and it actually, there's no magic here. It involves a lot of prompting and try and run and error. So if you're thinking about doing that up front, it's not going to happen. You start with building something that's there, you're evaluating continuously, using your team and others to help you with evaluation, have consistent metrics. What help us actually, it's to using Augment to generate the guidelines for Augment. So because you can process through large code base and look for the patterns, those patterns you really need in those guidelines. But you don't want to be very specific, because then your guidelines will be opposite of what you want to achieve, because you will restricting your engineers or some new workflows from alternative paths. So you need to be very careful, take a step-by-step approach, utilize this manual as much as possible at the beginning. So everyone who want to try and build, it's not blocked by governments. And then step by step, you're going to reach some auto rules and being able to actually improve your efficiency.
That makes sense. And it's definitely a pattern that we've heard repeating now. I know that James at Tilt in our first session talked about how they were just constantly iterating these rules. It's not a one and done scenario. You kind of have to look at gaps and look at the agent behavior and then continue to modify your rules accordingly.
Yes, I fully agree. Then.
So maybe you can share a bit more on, how all of this is helping to improve the lives of folks on your team.
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So I have some couple of stories. So basically, everything starts with Augment CLI. We use that to create this specialized automation agents. I personally just created a couple just to see how they work and beneficial for us. Those are like micro AI personas. Think about your like SRE or your pair programmer or someone just on your back that you don't need to have your team member with you at the early stages of the project, but helps you with certain use cases. And one of the case I have that I'm evaluating right now a lot is this architecture validation agent. So the problem is, imagine you are a staff engineer and needs to set up the new solution for like critical functionality, where you need to deal with like some SRE concerns, performance, scalability, operational excellence, alerting, all those stuff that may not be in your code, right? So you need to have some MCP, some of the dynamic guidelines, some static guidelines, as well as deep insights of the large code base. So all of that combined help you to evaluate multiple options. We're talking about like 30, 50 different alternatives. Nothing that human will embark unless actually in prison, right? So you have a tool that can help you with specific amount of planning to drive this evaluation, produce your report, produce the right data, and then based on that, you can still do the evaluation. But now you have cut all the noise. There's lots of legwork being done, and you can work more efficiently towards this high quality technical spec that we value in MongoDB. Another use case I have, it's just basically performance analytics. So I share with you this MongoDB MCP for CI/CD integration. So when we do the performance test, you're going to have large results. There's some reports, some analytics. And you can actually have like 100 megabytes of logs to process through. And buried in that, you could have a single line that's very important that human may miss. And for us, we looking for excellence. So to be able to use Augment to go process that large files by very clever MCP tricks and by guidelines, we can actually drive the proper reasoning. right? So Augie can helps us to do the performance analysis, proper reports, and then based on that reports, we can even update our plans and execute the test again, saving us time. Those tests can run for quite a while.
If you're enjoying this, then Lead Dev's got loads more to offer and there's tons to explore.
So the reason I love Lead Dev so much is they've got such a range of content on so many different topics in the world of engineering, leadership, and management.
So Lead Dev helped a lot on building my own career, right? And it's great to also see how it's helping the new generation as well.
Make sure to sign up and join us at leaddev.com.
Do you have a little technical nugget here that you might be able to share? Something that caught my attention, and what you're saying there is, you have these huge logs, right? And I think a lot of us, maybe the first time we've tried working with some agents, we get really ambitious and we try and do something large. And then the agent often complains like, hey, that's like too big, or it falls over and it can't handle it. And you said like some tricks with the MCP, or clearly you've got some kind of technique, or you've uncovered something here to be able to work with really large log files and do something useful. What's the learning there that others might be able to benefit from?
Mainly to maintain your context window, and that if you know what I mean. So being very, very strict about what you inject into your guidelines and how you process those large files. So like working through the window, and one thing that's really important here that I didn't put emphasis on is those dynamic guidelines. So I could technically drop this 3 megabytes of Markdown files to reason, but the results may not be as accurate. But if I would let the agent to query specific topics and get a major understanding, it's almost more accurate than any human that you will pick to do the same task. So the trick is to enable, like human, you enable agent to work better, and that's through dynamic guidelines rather than having guidelines with, let's say, tons of code snippets, because that's not going to be maintainable in the long future.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
go ahead.
I have like this practical example. If you want me to go deeper, like, you can imagine like as an engineer, you can just like working on functionality. You want to like you're finishing the day, and you will like request your team feedback. But right now you can just like evaluate the set of the rules using Augment, ask for any insights from technical design. Am I still aligned? Is there the challenges? We run some workflows, having agent to run something for you, evaluate some choices rather than just bash scripts. It's huge potential for us for automation. And just making sure that your change is like refined and meeting the standards that we have. So like on daily basis, what I'm looking for those guidelines, like I can actually use this prepared PR description, and once I get the feedback, I can reiterate and always make sure that's very accurate. I can work through the code comments or my unit test, if my unit tests are meeting all the criteria. Did I miss anything? So this is like ultimate pair programmer. Some very detailed, we go through the code, understand my changes, my last two commits, etc. Checking code standards like this API guidelines, even suggesting some improvements, and have many, many more, right? As a cool thing, for example, we can do UI changes, the Augment Playwright integration. You can just tell them like, okay, this is a code I added. Please make a screenshot and update. I can upgrade the PR with a recent change, right?
Yeah, I love all those kind of points that you picked up on, because one of the knocks that I hear on a lot of the kind of first wave of AI coding assistants is that they're generalists, they're trained on everything, and B, like they focus on the area of code generation or writing code, and that was never the bottleneck at all. What you're talking about is getting fast feedback, running unit tests, updating your guidelines, your documentation. Like these are all the areas that actually give engineers pain. And you've clearly kind of lived through that maybe a little bit quicker than most. I don't know, tell us a little bit about how you kind of came to that realization that the actual hands-on keyboard code writing part isn't the valuable part here.
I think I can speak for our audience. Engineers like to write the code, and sometimes it's not about volume. So when you need to think deeply about the code, the best code is no code. So thinking about solutions that are perfect, and it's never going to work, but you can use Augment to give you almost perfect solutions for certain scenarios by just evaluating so many of those. And I want to make sure the code, its generation is still present. But what I like about Augment is that you can generate 20 examples, different use cases. They're throwaway code that non-engineer will be actually willing to write because it takes so much time. It's so many variations, but it's so easy to generate it and so easy to get the right reasoning. That's why for performance, for any operational excellence, alerting, different corner cases in the code, it helps to have that clarity for engineers. So when I'm writing the change, I can quickly evaluate what are my corner cases, where we can fail, what are the systems that we connect with. So all those SRE insights. Not everything is in the code, not everything every engineer think about when writing that code. And this is where those extra agents plus Augment bridge the gap.
Curious to get your perspective on where all this is going, Wojtek. I mean, you're kind of very close to always using the latest and greatest things. Like, what do you think is possible here, and where would you love to see these agents and AI systems get better still?
I see, apart from my role in MongoDB, I see larger trend within the ecosystem of companies wrapping those Augment commands that I'm building like a scripts into some composable elements that you can run within some infrastructure. And then you can call them dynamically via API calls, hooks like Slack. So having this most productive automation that helps you to do the AI agents in a cloud, but also have that kind of plug-in infrastructure that you can build workflows. Then the big part is basically understanding how those workflows work, measure their efficiency, so guardrails. So the kind of registries of Augment CLI, that's something I will be working with. I'm also evaluating remote capabilities that are present. So this is combining those two could be very powerful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that idea of a registry, and I love like that you've kind of focused on a couple of kind of persona-based agents, haven't you? Tell us a little bit about like how you've landed on those specific kind of parts of the engineering lifecycle, and then where do you go next? Have you got your eye on a new problem that you're trying to attack here?
I was mostly driven by my own personal use cases. So this is where when you see the patterns in your teams, specifically if we're thinking about like, for example, code reviews, what are the standards and common comments that they're coming with and why they're coming? Normally you can say like, if you have a code review and you have so many comments about the style, you're probably missing linting. But in most of the cases, we're asking ourselves like, okay, but linting on this case will be very, very hard. There are so many corner cases. You need human to validate that case. And this is where AI really bridging the gap specifically on every work that requires very due diligence, right? So you have a large amount of data, something that many engineers could be feel like dreading the work, like evaluating, reporting, slide decks, spreadsheets of the list. This is where you typically in the past, you could write some like automation in Python, but right now you can use Augment to do that. Although it's actually better to use Augment to actually drive that work rather than just give you one solution, one script. Because when you let the agent go through, you may actually have more diverse results. It will think out of the box, some sequential thinking. Not sure if you guys know about this one. Will help you with the planning. Specifically, if you don't have a good plan, sequential thinking can bridge it step by step. evaluate some alternative paths, and get you there. Hope I
Yeah,
answered.
focus on the pain. It's good advice.
I'd be interested to go back to, talking about how you evaluate these tools a little bit.
Yeah.
And, your perspective as to like just how long it takes to maybe realize some of the things you mentioned. And if there's specific, activities or use cases you should chase. So to bring a bit more clarity to that, if you're going to, evaluate one of these products, do you think you need 2 weeks, 4 weeks to determine if it's really good contextually and has a good understanding of the code base? Is there specific types of tasks that you think you need to try and do, or is it that you should just work through your normal Jira backlog that you have? Like, how would you set that up?
Before you embark on the journey of evaluating anything, you need to ask yourself, what are your use cases, right? And then exploring that, being able to understand what are the use cases and what is your context. So different companies may have a different context. So MongoDB, it's all focused on quality, brevity, high quality technical docs that anyone can jump through and reason, as well AI can reason about. If your organization is like less structured, but you still may looking for different productivity gaps. So first phase for evaluation is to define your criteria, and AI can help you based on like typical productivity, like reviews. If you have if you have a bug in production, so you can use your data. What are your main challenges for the business? Is it a stability? Is it about some gaps? Is it about architecture? And start with that. Then seek how you can formalize those into AI workflows. Is it about validation? Is it about assistance? And then you can embark on the journey to evaluation. To really answer your question, I'm kind of on the spot here. The real path is to start simple. So when I started working, I look for very specific wins. To give you example, some funny moments, like my first query to Augment was, can you actually write the comment for the change I made 3 years ago? It was like a couple classes, and it was very deeply technical. And at the time, I didn't left many comments. And I checked how well it crafted my intentions. And like, is it 100% accurate? Did it catch us the facts? Did it catch us all the essence? As well, when you look for evaluation, you need to think about what's the noise to value ratio. So, and this is very hard because you need to have persons, like in MongoDB, we had these volunteers who just guys who were in dev productivity like myself for years. So we know how we done code generation, SDK generation in the past, and we wanted to translate the same experience back to the AI times. So you need to also invest in your own team's awareness to make sure that when you do those evaluations, you don't have someone just basically putting one sentence, please write me an app or functionality, and then evaluate it as, oh, yeah, this doesn't work, didn't went through. The one common thing to start with, it's that start to build a plan for the work that it's non-complex, it's boring, and something that your team's done in the past. So comparing by manual results and Augment, you can really see how well it fits and how basically, did it write the same test? Did it cover extra cases? Did it write extra code? Did it add too little? All those aspects you can fine tune by guidelines, but the initial results will give you this instant feel about where you're at.
Nice. Just for the audience, this is your last chance to ask Wojciech any questions. So hit that Q&A button if you want to get something in the next few minutes. While we wait and see if any of you do, I've got my questions. So one thing I love to ask is, you've gone through a lot of iteration here throughout this process. You've been like really hands-on with these tools, evaluating them, using them, building out these kind of more mature models. What's the one thing that you wish that you had known at the start that you know now that would have saved you a bunch of pain during that?
That's a good question. I think what I would have known is I will try to automate better. I will try to focus less on me putting some questions into the IDE chat, right? And then getting some results, drafting some documents out of it, using MCPs as soon as possible with the insights, because that will really, for organizations, when you have individual developers just being super productive, that may not be the big gain. But if you enable some workflow for large groups of engineers, this is where you see the real benefits, and it's easy to procure any tools.
Nice. Matt, any more questions from you?
No, but this has been really informative, and I love getting the take of someone who's actually using the product day in, day out, and really close to a massive code base with a lot of complexity. It's really great to hear from you, Wojtek, on these pieces.
Thank you so
Nice.
much.
I've got a couple of audience questions now. One of them's actually just asking for a blog or an article on your architectural validation agent, and so maybe we can follow that up afterwards. I'm sure that a lot of people would love that. But we got another one from Jerry here, which is a question we get a lot actually, which is, how do you handle users that don't know how to use AI and keep saying it's not giving me what I want? How do you kind of bring those more skeptical developers along on the journey?
I will paraphrase the very common paper that AI enthusiasts may, the attention is all you need paper, as some of you may recall. I used to kind of paraphrase it as planning is all you need. So most productive AI engineers, they're not fast at, getting the results. So you typing something and just like agent does it and you just like go on holidays. This is not happening. The way it works is that you go there and you draft the initial plan for your work, and you spend a lot of time defining, querying, and improving it. So when you execute it, it's almost like you were writing that code yourself, right? So the plan could include actual source code that you as an engineer will write. It will involve set of checks, tests, aspects from technical documentation, aspects for MCPs that will dynamically fetch different documents that you will bring to that context. And this is where the big work starts, right? So if you don't have a plan, it's classic, right? If you don't have a structure, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a technical design, don't expect agents to guess what you want to as a result. Funny story is that agents are actually quite good at just, if you want to write Facebook app, because of there's so many Facebook clones, it will very easy do that. But if your use case is very specific, you have a business goals, extra context, you will be very unlikely badly surprised when you get the initial query for the sentence. But once you have a plan, you can fully control it and get some results. So this is how you control investment. So you're investing a lot of time up front, and you may be investing even more like you were writing that code yourself. But eventually the result that you're getting is much better because you have a very comprehensive test. You have a way to generate very comprehensive risks assessment and all of that you really need to drive this great experience for customers and so forth.
Yeah, nice. We've got another one here about pushback, which is like, how did you deal with any pushback regarding like the choice of a single AI tool? I know a lot of organizations have a really broad approach here where it's like, try them all and then figure out which one you like. But it seems like, Patrick.
That was approach as well. So we were very clear about, let's evaluate a couple tools. And I was lucky enough to just being able to sign into those lucky group of trying different tools. But we were also very clear what we want to achieve. So we want to achieve this specific set of results. And that's how we just basically provided the feedback. Right? So we're still working through argument, and we are kind of evaluating multiple use cases. So even right now, when we have access to tool, we can still provide the feedback, improve it, and etc.
Nice. And before we get out of here, like what are you focusing on next? What's the next iteration here? What's the big thing that you're trying to take on for the rest of the year? what little of a year we have left?
I think basically, I think we within the group we need to promote our Algae CLI workflows and see how we can just bring the workflows that I see beneficial for me, documenting them and making them available for everyone else. Also looking to see if we can just evaluate the code validation, PR validation and reviews. That's functionality that's also there.
Nice. Right, that's all we've got time for. But thank you again, Matt. Thank you, Augment. But most of all, thank you, Wojtek, for joining and sharing a little bit about how you've evaluated these tools and the work that you've been doing. I hope people have learned something. I hope people have got something they can take away. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. See you guys.